Katie Lemus, she, her, aya pronouns. I'm the education manager at Sawhorse Revolution. Sawhorse Revolution is a Seattle-based nonprofit. We do design builds with youth, and kind of like at the core of our values is developing a community-oriented youth through design, architecture, carpentry, and trade. We want to empower youth to practice like hands-on skills and then use these skills in whatever way they see fit. We don't necessarily push students to or youth to go into the design or into the trade. And if that's something they want to do, we have resources for them. It's just, kids live in their neighborhoods and they want to make their neighborhoods a better place. And that's kind of where we step in to help make that happen. We have design in the fall. We start off with the design portion. That's our kind of like starting session. Youth work with architects, designers, and also the community partner. We partner up with a community org or some mutual aid folks in the Seattle area. And then students go through the design process with the community partners and then also with the architects and other design mentors that they have. So part of what that looks like is doing like a site analysis, doing a client interview where they ask the community partner, like, what are your needs? What are like the issues that you're running into? And how can we create a structure, something that's being built that can help ease some of these issues or problems, tensions that are happening. At the end of the design program, typically they last between 10 to 12 weeks, depending on kind of when we start. But at the end, they present to their community partner, and then they also present to the community at large. So we have a celebration at the end of both design and build that's really heavily focused on the students and honoring and celebrating their work, as well as giving them the opportunity to speak about kind of their experiences. Springtime we build, so then students sometimes are the same as design, sometimes they're different students who are maybe a little bit more build oriented, but we'll work with carpenters and other folks who work in the trades, other people who are skilled in carpentry or using power tools. Also at the end of build, we also have a celebration. Usually students kind of take folks through like a little site walk depending on the nature of the structure we're building. And they'll explain some of the components of what was designed and maybe how that design changed while it was being built. But students are still like the focus of that celebration. And it's really, like, you built the thing, you built the structure and it now lives in your community. And I would say youth voice is like really important for Sawhorse and for our work. Our work focuses on youth, and who better than the youth themselves to be able to tell us like, hey, this is going well, or like, actually, I hate doing this and I don't like this anymore. I think particularly with like after school programs, students choose to be there. They choose to be there every single day or the days that they are there. But to me, it's something that it's like a choice that is actively happening. And I've heard this from youth themselves when I interview them at the end of our programs, where they're like, it's not like school where we're kind of all forced to go to school to a certain degree. They're like, but everyone who signs up for example, like a Sawhorse program, they are choosing to be here. They want to be here. We're all here for the same reason, which is to like improve our communities or to give back to our communities. So I feel like in that element, for us, it's really important to like honor student voice and in the ways that students are comfortable sharing their voice. So for us, a lot of that is youth choice. We do like an end of program survey, which has a lot of demographic information that's multiple choice. That comes typically at the very end of our programming. We also do student interviews, student exit interviews. And then while the program is happening, we collect student stories. And that can come from things that us as staff have observed, or that other mentors have observed and they share with us. So that's kind of the three ways that we approach it throughout the program, besides our celebrations where students present. First and foremost, students have the option of opting out. Before we start any like exit interviews or before we do our end of program surveys, we tell students like, this is where this information is going to go. This is how it's going to be used. Typically it's used for fundraising and grants. And then from there, students can say yes or no. They're not penalized in any way. And then students are asked, for example, for exit interviews, do you want your name attached to this? Do you want your responses to be anonymous? I won't put a name. I can just put your first name. I can put your first name, last initial, if you want your full name in there and you want your credit, I can do that too. Yeah, from there we actually get into the exit interview. We have 10 questions and they're not going to answer all 10 questions, but they have 10 questions to choose from, and they can choose 3 to 4, maybe 5 questions that they feel like called to speak on. So that gives them the choice to speak about things that they want to speak about or that they feel knowledgeable speaking about without us being like, you have to answer, only these 4 questions. The questions have been worked out and worded in a way where they're not a yes or no answer. They're more of if you're thinking about school, like an extended response or a short answer type of situation. So students are able to kind of describe their experiences. I also let students know, like, hey, if I have follow-up questions, I might ask them. You are free to say no. You are free to be like, I'm not going to answer that question. And like I said, that typically does not happen. But when it does happen, it's like, thank you for advocating for yourself. We'll move on to the next question. I would say like even in our downtime, like that is still time to like capture student voice because that's where students are, you're just chit-chatting. It's building that relationship, building that connection of like, you're here in our program, but we care about you beyond just what you're doing here. We care about you in the sense of, in the whole sense, right? Of like, you're a member of our community, you're a youth, you go to school, you do so many things. And I think like having those conversations with youth early on and just being like, how was your day at school? Like, where are you going on, where are you going on vacation? All these like little like what feels like small chat really lead us into the like maybe a slightly more like powerful story, or students being able to be more honest with us when we're doing the extra interviews of like, hey, I enjoyed this, but like I did not enjoy this. The other thing that we do is that we do pay students a stipend. It is based on, so they can either get a stipend or community service hours. Most Seattle public schools, and I would say most private schools in the Seattle area, do require some amount of community service hours. And with our program, students, depending on the length of the program, and their attendance, but students can knock out like 40 to 60 hours doing one program, right? And so if you do 2, that's 80 to 120 hours. So students are able to like get those out of the way doing maybe like a program or 2. The stipend amounts look different depending on like the time commitment, and also keeping in mind for our programs that run every single day, that also means that students won't be able to work a summer job. So keeping that in mind and adjusting the stipend amount has been really successful that we've seen. So we really want to show students that like their work is valuable. What you're doing here is important, and that is why you're getting a stipend. That is why you're getting community service hours. I would say typically students are specifically for build are able to really choose like, I like this task. Or, maybe they have some limitations. They're like, hey, I actually don't want to be digging out holes. Or they can switch and they're like, I want to dig out. We had a group of students who like really liked gardening. And so they were like, we love digging. We want to dig all the time. And yeah, that was what they did most of the time was digging. But for design, I feel like design's a little bit harder because we do kind of have, I wouldn't say it's a more like prescribed, but it's more of like, hey, we're all sketching. And so I think on the surface there seems like there's a little bit less student choice in that. But I would say in the design, student voice comes out a little bit more because they're the ones actually designing what the structure is going to look like. So they're working with the design mentors, the architects, the designers, and other folks to really be like, okay, what if we had, what if we had double doors? And then we talk about, client needs versus like the aesthetic and like, will this cause a safety issue? Like, will this be broken into more? And trying to problem solve and think about kind of all the layers that go into that. And there's a lot of choices that need to be made when we're designing a structure. And I will say sometimes students get overwhelmed by the amount of choices where they're like, what do you mean I'm choosing the roof and I'm choosing the siding and I'm choosing out where the windows go and I'm choosing out what types of doors we have. And sometimes I'll be like, hey, like, what door do we want? And they're like, what do you mean? We just want a regular door. And I'm like, but does it go on this wall, this other wall, this other wall? Like, maybe we don't want a door at all. Um, so there's lots of choice that come out in that. And I would say for design, the thing that we kind of run into is that decision paralysis, is trying to figure out like, okay, how can we maybe not limit the amount of choices, but how can we support you going through these very many choices? Both for design and build, it's really, we try to really not tell students, but kind of so students get the feeling that it's not just individual choices, right? Like if we have a program with 12 youth and 5 mentors or 6 mentors, and we're each making individual choices, we're not going to have a cohesive design or build. So what, we need to think of like the collective and also like the client and how can we solve, like conflict. There really isn't conflict, but like how can we combine multiple ideas into one cohesive idea? And it's really amazing because students are really good at doing this, especially if they kind of get to decide how they do that. And we really try to leave some of those choices up to students of like, how do you want to get to this final consensus? And it's just every single time it's different. And every single time you have, even within the same group, you have different students who kind of step up to the plate and they're like, hey, like, I think we should go this way. Um, but it's just overall like really cool to see how all their brains work. I would definitely say student choice, trying to give as much student choice as possible within the program that you have in a way that is manageable for you and also for your students. Um, I would also say, and these are not in order of importance, I would also say like informing students of like the reasoning behind why they're doing something. Um, whether it can really truly be anything. But I think that students, when they hear like, hey, this is my reason for doing this is how we're using the information we're collecting from you, or this is how we're kind of using what you're telling us, it it gives them the agency and the power to make informed decisions, which I feel like, and students have also said that they feel like they really don't get the opportunity to do. Um, and I would say the third thing is really just trying to like meet students where they're at. And I feel like that really depends on like the demographic or the group of students you're working with. I know that changes for us all the time. Um, but and it's something that I also try to remember, we also have rough days of like sometimes students don't want to do anything and it's like, dang, why? Like, how can I get to you? And sometimes it really is just like letting that student or that youth just sit in that room because that might be the only safe space they have. And letting them just sit there and hoping. And I always like to be like, thank you for being here. I hope to see you next week. And those like that interpersonal connection is so important because students, youth want community as much as like we do. Um, and so I think really like focusing on that community aspect really leads to like student voice. It leads to students feeling empowered that they can express themselves and that what they say will be taken seriously and that it will be, considered. So I would say those are my top three. I would also say the thing that you can really implement tomorrow is really telling students like or youth like, hey, this is why you're doing this. Um, and then, like I said, they can make informed decisions and decide what is best for them.